There's something weirdly satisfying about a silent office at 8:03 a.m. Coffee brewing, keyboards clicking, a faint hum of the AC that still works despite years of budget cuts. It had been my peaceful routine for the past 3 years. Ever since I graduated, I'd been grinding away in this mid-tier tech company with a name that sounded like someone mashed a keyboard. Quantixis. Fancy enough to impress your parents, irrelevant enough that no one ever heard of it. We weren't Google. Hell, we weren't even Bing. But I liked it. Decent people, good team, and a broken espresso machine that spat out whatever it felt like, which is how I discovered accidental caramel macchiato was my new favorite thing. Then came Karen. Not a Karen. The Karen. With a capital K, patent pending. If you're imagining a woman with an aggressive bob cut, heels that screamed authority issues, and a clipboard that might as well have been a weapon, congrats, you nailed it. She stormed into our department like she'd been handpicked by God to save our souls from mediocrity. In reality, she was hired as a workflow efficiency consultant, which is HR speak for professional micromanager. From day one, Karen made it her mission to assert dominance. She printed her own parking sign. Her first email had the subject line, "Standards moving forward, let's get serious." Her second email CC'd our VP and included a 23-point critique of the team's attitude and email etiquette. I wish I was kidding. I've worked with intense people before. But Karen didn't just walk into the room like she owned it. She walked over it. She had this way of making you feel like every sentence you said was a kindergarten art project, and she was the judge of an international design contest. You could be explaining code architecture and she'd interrupt with, "Is that really the best approach? Or just the one you're used to?" A few people pushed back at first, then realized it wasn't worth it. She wore down the fight like water on stone. By month 2, most of us just nodded, smiled, and hoped she'd go micromanage someone else for a few hours. Things were tolerable, until the merger. We'd all heard the whispers. A bigger firm was swallowing us whole. The name sounded sleek and scary, Ethereum Technologies. Sounded like something Elon Musk would build on the moon. Everyone was nervous. Reorgs, layoffs, culture shifts. The kind of changes where HR starts giving out mental health flyers before anyone's even fired. Then the new hires started trickling in. One of them was this intern. I say intern, but the badge said strategic development trainee, which is probably what they call interns when they're trying to impress shareholders. Her name was Emma, and I swear, the air changed when she walked in. Not in a weird, rom-com slow-mo way. Though okay, maybe just a little, but more like someone finally opened a window in a room full of stale Karen-scented air. She was young, yeah, but sharp. Confident without being annoying. Asked smart questions. Listened more than she talked. And unlike some people, she didn't treat coworkers like NPCs in her corporate video game. Obviously, Karen hated her on site. I don't know what it was. Maybe Emma smiled too much. Maybe she didn't immediately bow before the clipboard queen. Or maybe it was that Karen smelled kindness like blood in the water. Whatever the reason, she zeroed in. First it was little things. Emma, this email wasn't formatted to spec. There was no spec. Emma, your badge isn't visible at all times. We weren't even customer-facing. Then came the more aggressive moves. Emma, let's schedule weekly feedback sessions. Which, translation, meant, Emma, I will now publicly humiliate you every Thursday at 2 p.m. I watched it happen, and I'll be honest, I tried not to get involved. Office politics are like quicksand. You only realize how deep you're in once your shoes are gone. But every time I saw Karen corner her, that voice in my head said, say something. So I did. First time, I casually asked if Karen really needed to schedule a 45-minute performance debrief because Emma forgot a header. Karen fake smiled and said, "Oh, I just believe in high standards. I assumed you did too." Second time, I walked by their one-on-one and accidentally knocked over Karen's stack of printouts. Oops. Eventually, it became a routine. Karen pokes. I block. Emma silently thanks me with that little half smile like we're both in on the joke. Of course, Karen noticed. Her smile got tighter. Her tone, colder. She stopped talking to me and started sending everything via email, CCing my manager like we were in middle school, and she wanted to tattle that I pulled her hair. Things escalated. Not to full-on war, but definitely to Cold War with occasional skirmishes. Meanwhile, the merger loomed. We were told there'd be an integration meeting where the new owners, some bigwigs from Ethereum, would be present. Rumor had it they'd be evaluating department heads, reviewing performance, even making personnel adjustments. Translation: heads would roll. People started freaking out, updating portfolios, scrubbing LinkedIns, quietly printing out confidential files at the copier like they weren't planning to flee at the first sniff of layoffs. Karen? She walked around like she already had a reserved seat in the C-suite. Don't worry, she told one of the project leads, clapping them on the back like a mafia boss. I've been through 3 mergers. Just show confidence, and they'll keep you. I swear. She strutted down the hallway like she was auditioning for Succession. I, on the other hand, had made peace with it. I knew I'd done solid work. Even if I got cut, I wasn't losing sleep. In fact, I was mostly thinking about whether Emma would still be around, and how soon I could ask her out once the office stopped being a battlefield. But I had no idea what was really coming. The day of the integration meeting was a Monday, because of course it was. Mondays already feel like a punishment. Add corporate espionage, performance reviews, and potential layoffs into the mix, and it felt less like a workday and more like a season finale where anyone could get written off the show. I showed up at 8:02. The coffee machine was somehow less functional than usual, either out of pity or in protest. I still can't tell. The office buzzed with nervous energy. People whispered in corners, printers worked overtime, and Slack had never been more passive-aggressive. Meanwhile, Karen was glowing. I don't mean figuratively. I mean she was wearing this ridiculous bright red blazer that practically shouted, "I'm irreplaceable." It had shoulder pads sharp enough to slice through office morale. She marched in like a politician entering a photo op, offering nods of fake encouragement and "don't stress, I've got this" looks to everyone. The way she smiled, you'd think she was about to be crowned director of everything. Emma, on the other hand, stayed quiet, calm, focused. She wore a simple navy blouse, took notes during the morning huddle, and kept her distance from Karen, who had entered full predator mode. At one point, Karen literally said, out loud, in front of 3 people, "Interns should be seen, not heard." I turned my head so fast I pulled something in my neck. Emma just blinked, nodded slightly, and kept working. Grace under fire, which, I'm convinced, only made Karen foam at the mouth harder. I wasn't the only one noticing. People had started to watch the Karen versus Emma dynamic like it was a sitcom. Every time Karen snapped at her, there was this invisible pause in the room, like we were all waiting for the laugh track. But here's the thing about Karen. She didn't just want control, she needed everyone to know she had it. She was addicted to the performance. So she upped the ante. Around noon, I was walking back from lunch, turkey sandwich, side of existential dread, when I caught a bit of Karen's voice echoing from the hallway near the conference rooms. She was laying into Emma. Loudly. And when I say take initiative, I don't mean undermine my authority. You don't get to question how I run things here, got it? I turned the corner. Emma stood by the copier, holding a thick folder. Calm, but clearly cornered. Karen didn't even blink when she saw me. She just narrowed her eyes and added, "Some people think they can charm their way through corporate. Real businesses aren't impressed by smiles." That was it. No more passive bystanding. Is there a problem here? I asked, stepping up beside Emma. Karen barely looked at me. "No problem," she said, voice like vinegar. "Just giving a little guidance." "Right," I said, "because public scoldings are so effective." She turned to me, slowly. "You might want to be careful about who you defend, you know. These are transitional times." "Oh, I know," I said, smiling. "Transitions reveal a lot." Emma didn't say anything, but she glanced at me, just for a second, and that was enough. That afternoon, everyone got the calendar invite. Transition integration briefing, mandatory attendance. 3 p.m., conference room A. No one was late. They brought in the big table, the one they use when someone's either being promoted or exiled. There were nameplates, bottled water, that awkward fruit tray no one ever touches except Greg, Who thinks grapes count as a personality? Karen was already seated, legs crossed, red blazer on full power mode. I sat a few chairs down, pretending to be calm. Emma came in last, taking a seat quietly near the wall. Then he walked in. Mr. Sterling, CEO of Ethereum Technologies. Trim, sharp suit, voice like warm concrete. He didn't just walk. He entered like gravity worked differently for him. He introduced himself, thanked us for welcoming the future, and started talking about synergies and next-level integrations. The kind of buzzwords that make you question if your job will still exist in 20 minutes. Karen leaned forward, nodding like she was trying to absorb his soul through eye contact. Mr. Sterling began naming people who had contributed positively to operational continuity. A few heads lifted. He nodded at 2 managers, thanked a developer who'd streamlined a migration process. Karen, visibly glowing now, adjusted her blazer. Then he said, "But I'd like to talk about something else, something critical to our values." The room hushed. He tapped a folder in front of him. Team dynamics. Karen perked up like a meerkat. Sometimes, despite performance goals and charts and graphs, a team's success, or failure, is about a single presence. One person can lift a team, or drag it down. He paused, then looked straight at Karen. The silence was immediate and deafening. "I pulled department-level data going back 6 months," he continued, flipping open the folder. "It's impressive how one arrival coincided so precisely with a dip in productivity, an increase in HR complaints, and a series of internal conflicts." Karen's smile froze. Slowly, painfully, Mr. Sterling kept going. "There's also the question of behavior. How we treat others. How we support growth. Especially new talent." Karen was still holding her smile, but it looked more like she'd just bitten into a lemon. I leaned forward, watching the show. Emma sat still as stone. Then Mr. Sterling looked around the room and said, "And speaking of new talent, I'd like to introduce the new chair of our strategic board." He turned, gesturing with an open palm, and pointed at Emma. The room inhaled in unison. If you've never seen a woman's ego do a full-body backflip and land flat on its face, I highly recommend the experience. Karen's expression froze somewhere between smug and utterly shattered. Her jaw opened just slightly, as if trying to form the words, "what the actual," but couldn't find the Wi-Fi. I had to look away for a second, because I was 95% sure if I made eye contact with Emma right then, I'd burst out laughing and ruin the entire cinematic moment. Mr. Sterling didn't miss a beat. "This is Emma Sterling," he said, as if casually announcing the weather. "She's been working under observation as a strategic development trainee as part of our leadership incubation program. Effective immediately, she'll be joining the executive team as head of strategic growth." The room didn't gasp, but only because everyone was too stunned to breathe. "Karen?" Karen was blinking like she'd just accidentally wandered into traffic. She shifted in her seat, straightened her blazer, and, bless her deluded heart, actually tried to smile. You could see the gears grinding in her head, trying to recalibrate her entire personality into gracious and supportive mentor. "That's fantastic," she said. Her voice was like someone trying to talk while swallowing a golf ball. Emma finally stood. "Thanks, Dad," she said simply. "Dad, Dad, Dad." There was a split-second pause. Then a ripple of suppressed reactions. Someone dropped a pen. Someone else stifled a cough that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Karen made a noise. It might have been a gasp, a grunt, or a small internal explosion. Hard to tell. "I've seen a lot these past few weeks," Emma continued, her voice calm, even. "This team is full of talent, passion, people who actually care about building something, not just building their resumes." Cue half the room nodding like their necks had just been oiled. "But I've also seen how toxic behavior, no matter how dressed up in standards and process improvement, can poison a department." Her eyes flicked, just for a second, to Karen. And that was when I knew Emma wasn't here just to play the game. She was here to rewrite the rules. Mr. Sterling stepped back in. "Effective today, Emma will be forming a new strategic growth team, hand-picked personnel, direct access to resources, and complete hiring autonomy." I blinked. Did he just say hiring autonomy? And of course, he added, turning slightly, we expect full cooperation from all current department leads. Though, to be clear, that won't be an issue for everyone. He glanced at Karen like she was gum he'd just stepped on. Karen, he said, almost gently, I've reviewed your metrics, your feedback history, and your conflict logs. Quite frankly, the numbers don't lie. Karen opened her mouth to object, but he held up a hand. I'm not interested in excuses. You're being let go. Effective immediately. Scrack. That was the sound her ego made hitting the floor. You're being terminated not only for underperformance, he continued, voice flat as iron, but for behavior that directly hindered the productivity of others, including harassment of new employees, documented, by the way, thanks to very diligent people in HR. Karen's mouth opened again, but this time nothing came out. I wasn't even mad. It was like watching the villain in a movie finally realize they're not in control of the script anymore. You can collect your belongings this afternoon, Mr. Sterling added. Security will escort you if necessary. And I strongly advise against applying anywhere in our network of partner companies. This is not a situation we'll be keeping quiet. The silence was so thick you could have served it as dessert. Karen stood slowly, like every movement hurt. Her face had gone from smug pink to sickly gray. She tried to speak again, maybe to plead, maybe to rage, maybe to threaten, but stopped herself. For the first time since she walked into our office, she looked small. Then she turned and walked out. No goodbye, no clipboard salute. Just a shriveled husk of corporate self-importance and sensible heels. And just like that, the Karen era was over. The rest of the meeting? A blur. Mr. Sterling handed things off to Emma, who smoothly transitioned into discussing next steps, development goals, and new opportunities. But nobody was really listening, not at first. They were still processing the fact that the intern they ignored for 3 weeks now technically outranked our entire management chain. When the meeting adjourned, people shuffled out like dazed survivors of a corporate thunderstorm. You could hear the whispers starting before the doors even fully closed. I stayed behind, not really sure why. Maybe I wanted to be the last one to leave. Maybe I just didn't want the moment to end. Mr. Sterling approached me. I didn't call you out by name in that meeting, he said, offering a nod. But I'm well aware of the work you've done. My brain did that thing where it tries to play cool while immediately panicking. What did I do? How much does he know? Am I being sued or promoted or knighted? He smiled slightly. Emma told me you've got potential. She also said you stood up when it counted. I value that. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, the way dads do in movies where they don't know how to say, I'm proud of you. Then he walked out. I turned. And there she was, Emma. She walked over with that quiet confidence I'd come to recognize, the kind that didn't need permission to take up space. Well, she said, her smile slow, amused, knowing. That went well. I couldn't help but grin. Yeah, smooth onboarding. There was a beat of silence. Then she tilted her head. So, want to build something? Yeah, I said, standing straighter. Let's get to work. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.